Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's wonderful to see everyone today.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We're flying without Rabbi Bloom today, but I think we'll be able to keep the plane aloft. All right. We'll begin with Matovu. Page 68. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Page 73.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan la'asech v'bina le'achim ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'chori. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish harumihi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurihi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufihi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka aretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorkihi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechi mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam uzei Yisrael b'gvuraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam otei Yisrael b'tifaraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layav koach.
You may be seated.
Utenenu hayom l'chol yom l'cheinu chesed u'rachamim be'einech u'beinei choreinu v'tikulenu chasedim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasedim tovim le'amo Yisrael.
Rabbi Berlin is going to do a teaching, and that will be followed by Kadesh Rabbanan on page 85.
So in Deuteronomy 23, 16 through 17, we have the Asylum for escaped slaves. Asian Near Eastern law forbade harboring runaway slaves, and in international treaties regularly required allied states to extradite them. In contrast, the Torah here states that escaped slaves may settle wherever they wish in the land of Israel, and forbids returning them to their masters or enslaving them in the land.
Yehi ratzon lefanecha Adonai Elohei Avoteinu שתיתן חלקנו בדברתך ונהיה מתלמידיו של אהרון הכהן אוהב שלום ורודף שלום אוהב את הבריות ומקרבן לתורה.
Please rise rise for Kaddish Rabbanon, page 85.
Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabba. V'ilmad yivarach v'yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael v'agala u'bizman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam umei umaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha v'rechu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata Tush bechata v'nechamata, damiram v'yoma v'yimru amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan, ve'al Talmidehon, ve'al kol Talmidehon, ve'al kol man de'askin be'oraita, di be'arta, di b'chol atar da'atar. Yehei lechon u'chon shlam araba, china v'chlista v'rachamim, v'chayin arichin, v'mizona, v'revicha, v'forkana, Min kadam avahon di b'shmaya v'yibru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yibru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrama hu rachamav ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yibru amen.
You may be seated because it is the month of Elul. We will be turning to Psalm 27 on page 89.
V'davihi Adonai orihi v'yishmi mimi ilaha Adonai lo. Et panecha Adonai avakesh, Adonai avakesh. Et panecha Adonai avakesh. Et panecha Adonai avakesh, Adonai avakesh. Et panecha Adonai avakesh. Lechamar libi vakshu fanai. Lechamar libi vakshu fanai. Lechamar libi vakshu fanai. Et panecha avakesh.
Right, we'll be jumping ahead to Psalm 150 on page 134.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, bekosho, hallelujah, bekiauzo, hallelujah, bigvurotav, hallelujah, karogulo, hallelujah, beteka shofar, hallelujah, beneva bechinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, bemini veugav. Hallelujah, b'tziatzalei shama. Hallelujah, b'tziatzalei trua. Kol haneshama tehallel. Hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehallel. Hallelujah.
Page 143, Nishmat.
Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shemcha Adonai Eloheinu. מי לך ומי ישפטך ומי יערך לך על הגדול גיבור ונורא אל היום קונה שמיים וארץ נהללך שבחכם פרחם ברך השם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו האל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורתך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא, שוכן עד מהרום וקדוש שמו.
Page 149.
בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמחלות רביבות עמך בית ישראל. שכן חופת כל היצורים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות להלל לשבח, לפעל לרומם נדר, לברך ולאו לקלס. כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול ותשבחות, אל ההודאות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר שירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים. יתקדש שמי רבם, ועמד יברך ירצה, ימליך מלכותי בחיי כל וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, והגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבם מבורך, לעולם ומעלמיה יתברך. יתברך, וישתבח, יתברך תרמה וינשא, ויתהדר, ויתהלל, ויתהלל, שמי לקודשה בריחו. לאלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם בעלמם אמרו אמן.
Please rise for the Baruch, page 152.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, יוצר עוברי חושך, עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. הכל יודוך וכל שלכם. אין דרכך ואין זולתך, את צבילתך ומי דומה לך. אין דרכך ואין זולתך, אפס צבילתך ומי דומה לך. אין דרכך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו חיי העולם הבא. אפס צבילתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גודלו וטובו מלא עולם, דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו. המתגאה על חיות הכל רצון חונם פאר בכבוד נעים לשמו צלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו קרא לשמש ויזרח אור ראה והקים צורת הלבנה שבח נותנים לו כל שבח מרום תפארת וגדולה שרפים ואופנים בחיות הקודש לאל אשר שבה מכל המעשים.
Page 159.
תתפרח סבינו מלכנו מגלנו ברכנו שיבים וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושת טהרה ושירה וזמרה מברכים ומשבחים ומפרים ומעצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא קדוש הוא וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברא ונימה קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ כבודו ואופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מן הצים ומצרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו ואל ברוך עמו תיתנו.
Page 162.
אור חדש על ציון תאיר, אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו, מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותרה המלכה עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבחו בך, שבחו בך, אבינו מלכנו. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו תלמדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והערנו בתורתך, ודבר ליבנו במצוותיך, וייחל להודות לך ולאחל לך ביום הבא. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך על הדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו עשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 170.
לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים, חיסון נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצר ניסוי ישועתנו פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך. אסתת אבותינו אתה ומעולם.
Page 173.
תהילות אל עליון ברוך הוא בורא משה ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף שירה חדשה שיפו גאולים לשמחה על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו אוי אי 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 Sur Yisrael, Huma Be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvdechenu Mecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael, Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
We begin with a silent Amidah on page 175. We will repeat the Amidah, turning back to page 175.
Adonai sefakaitita, ufi agitehilatecha. Adonai sefakaitita, ufi agitehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות, ומביא גואל לפני בניכם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ובוקר שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים עטרה להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, לשני עפר, ניחמוך בגבורות, ומדום מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצליח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים.
Please rise, page 179.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכזה אל זה ואמר. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאו, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אז בכורש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מנסים ומצרפים ומתם ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כמחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגלה ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשיר עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד לך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקיש, ושבחך להגיד מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך הקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
You may be seated, page 181.
ישמח משה במתנתך, כי עבד נאמן קראת לו, כליל תפארת בראשו נתת באומנו לפניך על הר סיני, ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו, וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת, וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת. וכן כתוב בתורתך, וכן כתוב בתורתך, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. איי 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 ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי שש Shabbat vayinafash. V'lo nitato Adonai Eloheinu legoyei haratzot, v'lo hinchato malkeinu le'avdei kesilim, v'gam b'mnuchato lo yishmenu arelihim k'li Yisrael l'amcha netato b'yava, v'zer Yaakov asher b'ham b'charta. Mikadshei shvi'i kulam yizku v'yitranku mituvehecha v'ashvi'i ratzita bo, v'kidashto chantat yamimot karata zecher l'maaseh v'reishit. Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, Retzeh Minuchateinu, Kachenu b'mitzvotecha, V'tein chalkeinu b'toratecha, Sahabeinu mituvecha, V'samchenu b'shuatecha, V'taher libeinu, Le'adecha be'emet, ve'antileinu, Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ahava u'veratzon, Shabbat koshecha, ve'anuchu v'Yisrael, Mikadeshei shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu b'yom chesed filatam v'shevet avodah l'dabir beitecha v'ishe Yisrael filatam b'yavat tikadol b'ratzon u'techila ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael l'Amecha v'techazen eineinu v'shuvcha l'tzion v'rachamim. Baruch atah Adonai, Amachazir Shechinato leTzion, Modim anachnu la, Shatau Adonai Hatov kilocha l'rachamecha, v'arachem kilotamu chasadecha, me'olam kirinu lach. V'al kulam yitbarach v'terman shimcha malkeinu tamid olam va'ed, v'chol ha'chayim yoducha sela, v'yalu et shimcha b'emet el yishrateinu ve'ezateinu sela. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lechana'el v'hodot. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, barakenu baracha mishulashet b'torah v'al yidei Moshe avdecha muram et li Aharon u'banav kohanim am kedoshecha ka'amor. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yechuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Sim shalom ba'olam tova u'bracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barkeinu avinu kulanu ke'echad, kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha. Ki be'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Torah chayim be'avat chesed, u'tzedaka u'beracha, ve'rachmim ve'chayim ve'shalom, yai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai, yai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai, ve'tovenecha levarech et damcha Yisrael, v'chol עת ובכל שעה משלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
Page 193, Can you shalom?
יתקדש ויקדש שמך ועלמא דבר חירותי ביום מלכותי בחייכון וביום אחרון ובחיי בכל בית ישראל בגולה בזמן קריב ויאמרו יהי שמי רב המבורך לעולם עולמי Shabbat, Miparit Raman Vinase, Vitadar Vitale Vital Shmede Kudasha, Le'eva Mikol Berkata V'Shirata, Chushbechata V'Nachamata, Damiram V'Yamavim Meru. Tikabel Slotun Vatahon, Decho Yisrael, Kadama V'Hani V'Shmaya V'Immeru. Yehesh Lamarava Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Alko Yisrael V'Immeru. Hosa Shalom B'Mramav, Hu Yasa Shalom, Aleinu V'Alko Yisrael V'Immeru. Amen.
Thank you, Hazanit Yael Krieger, for davening the whole service today. So we are going to turn to the Torah service on page 195. And the ark openers and Torah carriers should all move to the bima.
Ein kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai v'ein kema'asecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adoneinu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Kir Le'olema Shemo Yata. Adonai Hagidula Ve'Adivura Ve'Hanetzach Ve'Hahod Ki Hova Shamayim U'Ba'aretz Ki Hova Shamayim U'Ba'aretz Adonai Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'hishachavu, Lahadom Ravav Kadoshu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'hishachavu, Le'har Moshe, Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
So this week's Torah portion is Pitei, and we can find our verses for the triennial. It's chapter 23, verse 8 is where we will begin reading. It is on page 1123, 1123. So the very first Aliyah is the observant not to hate Edomites or Egyptians, and we begin all the laws about regulating the purity of the military camp. And we're very happy that John Jacobs will be reading Torah for us this morning. And I'm going to point something out also that's going to take place in the mont here. It is a common misperception that it's a midrash, actually, that tells us that Miriam had leprosy way back when she and Aaron went before Moses. So there is a midrash that says she was struck down with leprosy because they were gossiping when they went to Moses, but we actually, when we get to the mosque here, you'll hear me point out, it's actually confirmed in this Torah portion that that is indeed what Miriam had. So first, Aliyah, chapter 23, verses 8 to
Torah, Amen. Lo tita'ev Adami, ki achiv tavu, lo tita'ev mitzri, ki ger hayita be'arzo, banim, asher yavadu lahem, dor shlishi, yavo lahem b'kahal Adonai, ki tetzeh machaneh al oivecha, v'nishmarta mikol devarta, ki yiheh lecha ish asher lo yiheh tahor, Laila, ויצא אל מחוץ למחנה, לא יבוא אל תוך המחנה, והיה לבנות ערב ירחץ במים, וכבוא השמש יבוא אל תוך המחנה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם אתה בתוכנו.
Yashallah. So we continue with Aliyah 2, chapter 23, verses 13 through 15. Here we have the laws regarding the disposal of human waste when you're in the military camp. And then you go from this to something absolutely beautiful, the explanation for which is that God walks in the midst of the camp and it must be kept pure.
Yaman Haram and Benyamin Shady.
We continue with the third Aliyah, chapter 23, verses 16 through 19. Here you get the commandments to give asylum to escaped slaves, and you have laws prohibiting harlotry and sodomy among the Israelites. And then there's this odd rule that could be a whole seminar in and of itself, explaining that when you receive payment that you would give to a harlot, or you receive payment for selling a dog, it should not be used as payment to God for making good on a vow.
Yaman and Ruby Shlishi.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaBarach. Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bochar Banu Mikol Omin, Benatan Hanu et Torato, Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Amen. Lo taskerevet el Adonav, asher nazel elecha me'im Adonav, imcha yeshet b'kirbecha, b'makom asher yibchar me'cha t'arecha b'tov lo tonenu, lo tiyeh kadesha mibnot Yisrael, v'lo yiyeh kadesh mibnei Yisrael. Lo tavi et nanzona umachir keleb beit Adonai Elohecha lechol neder ki tovat Adonai Elohecha gam shnehem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'ha'eh olam natav Elokeinu, Baruch atah Adonai noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Yasher Koach. We continue with Aliyah number 4, chapter 23, verses 20 to 24. And here you are told you cannot charge interest from an Israelite, but you can do so from a foreigner. And that if you make a vow to God, and now this is understood also as a vow or a pledge to your synagogue, you must pay it promptly. But if you legitimately cannot pay it, it is not a sin. But then again, it says you must make good on your word and keep all of your vows.
Yalmon, Rav Avraham Yitzhak ben Yosef Hamishi.
Amen. Lo tashich le'achicha neshech kesef neshech okel neshech kol davar asher yishach v'nachri tashich u'le'achicha lo tashich le'ma'an yirechecha Adonai Elohecha le'kol mislach yadecha al ha'aretz asher ata v'shama le'rishtah.
Yasher Koach, so it looks like we are beginning actually in verse 22. John, how far are we going for the fifth Aliyah?
We won't worry about it.
We won't worry about it. Okay. So we have another Aliyah, and this next Aliyah will cover, this is the fifth Aliyah, chapter 23. You can eat grapes in the neighbor's vineyard, but you cannot load up your vessel. So you can eat the grapes with your hand, but you can't bring something to load up the grapes. And you can pluck corn to eat from your neighbor's vineyard with your hands, but you can't use a tool to shake it to try to get more corn off the stalk. And then we may get into laws regarding divorcing your wife. And I said that in that gendered way on purpose, and forbidding remarriage to a previously divorced wife who is married to another man, but then divorces that other man. You cannot remarry her because it would be confusing in terms of the laws of inheritance.
Talmud. Yehudi Kat Yisrael V'Chaya, Magiyashid, and we're going to do a little extra this time because we were a little short on the last one.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'chavanu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch Atah Adonai
Kipagoshid Rishenu Adonai Elohecha Me'imah V'hayava Keit V'hayavecha Keit V'chitato L'neder Lo V'chitato L'nedor Lo Yiyavecha Keit Motzat Vatecha Tishmor Motzat Vatecha Tishmor V'asita Asher Nidarta L'Adonai Elohecha Nidava Asher Nibarta V'ficha Kitavo V'perlecha V'yachata Anavim K'nafshecha Savecha V'yelkeliecha Lo Titein Kitavo V'kamatrecha V'kakatam Lilov Yadecha V'karmesh L'tanif Al Kamatrecha Ki kachish Isha U'Ba'alach V'haya Im lo timsachem einav kimatz avah ervat davar v'chatav lach sefer pritut v'natan yadah v'shilchach mibeito v'yatzah mibeito v'yalcha v'hayta le'ish acher u'sne'ah ha'ish acharon v'chatav lach sefer pritut v'natan yadah v'shilchach mibeito Oki amud ha'ish acharon asher lekachach lo le'isha lo yuchal ba'alah harishon hashilchach l'ashuv lekachach li'yod lo le'isha acharei asher hatama'ah ki tovahi lifnei Adonai v'lo tachti et ha'aretz Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachala.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei lanu matzah v'tachenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yasher Koach. And now we continue, and especially Yasher Koach, for those who aren't hearing it or don't know about a Dagesh, I also want to point out that you can really, the way John's chanting, you can hear the Dagesh in the hay. It's absolutely, absolutely beautiful. So you can, if there are any more coming up, I'm not sure if there are, but you can listen for that. Okay, we continue now. The 6th Aliyah, chapter 24, verses 5 through 9. Here you get the exemptions for military service for a year after you marry a wife. There's a prohibition against accepting a pledge that accepting the pledge of someone's means for supporting themselves. So if they need the thing they're pledging in order to make a living, you can't accept that. It explains that there's a capital punishment for a man who steals an Israelite and sells him into slavery. And, we don't have to wait until the maftir, actually, for the explanation of Miriam getting leprosy. We get the warning to follow very closely the laws for dealing with leprosy, which are already found in Leviticus.
Yamad, Shlomo Hirschman, Nufel B'Shlema, Shishi.
Baruch Adonai Namborah.
Baruch Adonai Elam Ba'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Elam Ba'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chartanu mitorah amin v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ki kachish yishach rasha lo yitzeh b'tzava v'lo ya'avor alav l'chol davar naki yiyeh lebeito shana echad v'simach et ishto asher lakach lo yachvor etayim v'rachet ki nefesh hu kovel Timatzei ish gonev nefesh me'echad mibnei Yisrael v'hitamer bo v'charo umet haganav hahu v'yartahaga v'kirbecha tishmor hishamer b'nega hatzadat lishmor ma'od v'la'asot kefol asher etchem hakohanim halavim, ka'asher tivitem tishnevu, ka'asher tivitim tishnevu la'asod, zachor et asher asa Adonai Elohecha leMiriam b'derech b'tzidkem miMitzrayim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yashar Koah, continuing with the 7th Aliyah, chapter 24, verses 10 through 13. If a man owes you money, you cannot enter his house to take it, so he must bring it out to you. However, you cannot accept it if he is poor.
Ya'amod Asher ben Yosef Durav 8:11, I get it right. Ashri'i.
V'shacha b'salamato v'rachecha u'lecha tietzdacha lifnei Adonai Elohecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Please rise for Katzikash. Yitkadel v'yitkadel shemei rabba, Yalmad v'yivrat v'yirutei v'yamlit malchutei, v'chai v'yitoru v'yasol v'echot v'chai v'chol v'Yisrael, the Maftir. It's going to be chanted by Audrey Kaufman. It is chapter 25, verses 17 through 19. And here we have the commandment to always remember Amalek's evilness against us, and which is directly opposed to where our particular Torah portion in the Triennial started, which is having love for our previous enemies. But that's because Amalek killed the weakest among the Israelites right at the point when we are at our lowest, and we are adjured to remember Amalek's name for all time. Talmud, Hazanit Yael, Vatayamim, Vishnu HaKohen HaMavtir,
Vayechu et Adonai HaKorav.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Ha'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Ha'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Zachoreh, asher asa lecha Amalek, v'derech b'tzeitechem mitzrayim, asher karecha b'derech, v'zanekecha, kol ha'nefeshim acharecha, v'ata yeviyakeh, Elo yarei Elohim, v'haya, v'haniach Adonai elamecha, lecha, mikol yerecha, misaviv, ba'aretz asher Adonai, Elohecha, noten lecha, nachala v'misha, תמחה את זכר עמלק מתחת השמיים לא תשכח.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Alright, so we have Mishabara for all who have read, as well as Mishabara for healing. Mishabara Chavatinu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, who yivarech et kol hakruim, asher alu hayom likvod hamakom, likvod haTorah, v'likvod haShabbat. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yivarech otam, v'et mishpachotam v'yishlach bracha v'hatzlacha, v'chol ma'atzidechem im kol Yisrael acheichem, v'nomar Amen. And for all who are ill, Mishabara Chavatinu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, who yivarech nirapeh et hacholim. Scott Lawrence, Dahlia Bat Razel, Chazan Shlomo Natan Ben Nechama, Barbara Rose, Lou Burl, Ilya Oak, Karina Gola Bat Huda Yehudat Tzvi, Leah Yehudat Bat Shena, Shapek Dov Ben Shimon Moshe, Emmanuel Ben Sarah, Ray Renshaw, Missy Rosen, Albert Alter, Rosie Gurman, Leah Bat Shimon Lazar, Bob Rasters, Justin Hardy, Yechiel Ben Aliza, Eva Abrams Heimowitz, Martin Rosenthal, Shulamit Bat Leah, Miriam Bat Yahudit, Adele Mendelson, David Schneider, Yechiel Ben Aliza. And is there anybody else you can say names out loud of people that you're thinking of? HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Alehem V'Hachasik Kal Rabotav V'Yishlach Lahem Hera Refuah Shlema L'Chol Avereihem V'Gidetem B'Toshah Kolei Yisrael Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf Shabbat Ki Milizo Refuat Rova L'Chol Hashtabak Alav Yislan Karim V'Nomar Amen. May God who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all of those on our list and all that we're thinking of. May the Holy One in mercy strengthen them and heal them soon, body and soul, together with others who suffer illness. And let us say, Amen. Yes, Hagba, Galila, Golelet. Yamad Amagvia Ta'amad Agolelet. Vizot HaTorah Asher Samoshe So our Haftorah portion is being chanted by Yael. Great. Okay, Yael Krieger is our Haftorah chanter. Haftorah can be found on page 1138. It is the fifth of the 7 Haftorot of constellations. So it's Isaiah 54 verses 1 through 10. It's a relatively short Haftorah today. And in it really, Israel's often compared to women in the relationship Israel to God. Israel's the wife to God's husband. And here Israel is being compared to 3 women in different stages of distress. So a barren woman who then is promised a tent full of children, a widowed woman who then is promised that she will not have to remember the, quote, shame of her widowhood, end quote. So there's a lot of commentary on that. And the third one is a woman who is left by her husband, but now that husband will take her back in love. The text does conclude with a reiteration of God's love for us and a promise that God will never again be angry at us. And then there's a comparison to that promise to the promise God made to Noah after the flood.
Thank you. And today's my 25th Bat Mitzvah anniversary. If you haven't been paying attention, this is not the easiest parsha to write an Devar Torah for as a 13-year-old. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratzah v'devreihem v'nemarim v'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah v'moshe avdo v'yisrael amo v'neviei ha'emet v'tzedek. Roni atava lo yalada v'tchili na'alzavim lo chala ki rabim neshomema mibnei le'olam Adonai archili mekom ha'halech v'yiriho mishkenotayich yatu al tachshochi areichem et harayich v'teotayich hazeki ki aminu semoti hifratzi v'zarei koyim yirash Ve'arim neshamot yoshivu al tir'i ki lo tevoshi ve'al tikami ki lo tachkiri ki v'asher almayit tishkachi v'cherkat aminitayich lo tizkari yohod ki lo alayich osayich Adonai tzevaot shemo v'goalech elohosh Yisrael Elohei kol ha'ayit yikareh ki isha zuma v'atzuvat ruach rach Adonai Ve'esh hanurim ki tme'em amar Elohayich Ve'rega katon azavtich v'rachamim gedolim akavsech Ve'shetzev kesef histarti v'nerpega mimech V'chesed olam nichamtich amar golech Adonai Ki me'lo avzori asher nishpati me'avor me'noach od ha'aretz ten nishpati miksof halayich mikar ba'av Ki harim yamushu ve'alvaot temutana v'chasdi v'techoyanush u'rishlomi lo tamud amar narachamech Adonai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sur kol ha'olamim tzadik v'chol ha'orot Ha'eman ha'omer Yosef medaber b'chayechem shekol devarav b'mitvat tzedek Ne'eman ataku Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim dvarecha v'davarecha midvarecha kol lo yashuv reikam Yamach ne'eman rachaman atah baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'chol devarav Rafeh Matzion ki hivret chayinu v'ladu b'nefesh toshia b'merav yameinu Baruch atah Adonai v'sameh Zion b'manecha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha v'malchut beit David b'shitacha B'mhera yafo v'yagel libeinu על כיסו לא ישב זר ולא ימחלו על אחרים את כבודו כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו שלא יכפנך עוד עולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני ענינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוננו אנחנו מודיעים לך ומברכים אותך יברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת
We are going to turn to page 224 and we call upon Asher Berlin to read the prayer for the state of Israel.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Sur Yisrael v'Gola, Arech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Gulatenu. Hagen Aliyah ve'avrat chastecha, ufros Aliyah suka shalmucha. Ushlach rocha v'amitcha l'rashea, sareya v'yotzea, v'taknim v'yitzah tova mifanecha. Chazik et medinei yigameh, eretz kodshenu, v'anchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, v'ater et nitzachon tatrem, v'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam,
Amen.
Yasher Koah. All right, stay up there, Asher, because we're going to do Asher on page 231. So if the first digit of your age is 1, you have to come up to the front for Asher, page 231. Unless you're under 12. I mean, yeah, 12.
Asher. No, other Asher. Who else? Who's next to you? I can't tell.
Page 231.
Asher yoshvei beitzecha, odel v'chasela.
Asher ha'amshech lo, asher ha'amshadnai Elohav.
Tehila leDavid, harom mincha l'hai hamelech, v'aracha shimcha le'olam ha'ed.
V'chod ha'malacha, v'chalacha shimcha le'olam ha'ed.
Gadol Adonai u'melamea, v'ligdolateu ein cheker. Adar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha. Sefer ha'ptucha yadiu, v'tzikvotecha yiranenu. Tov Adonai l'kol, rachamav v'kol ma'asav. Kevod malchutcha yomeru, u'gvurtecha yeberu. Malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha v'chol dor v'ador. Ve'nechol elachei saberu, ve'tamatanehem v'kram beitov. Tzadik Adonai v'toracha, v'chasid v'kol ma'asav. V'etzon yirav yaseh, v'eshavatam yishma v'yeshem. Tehilat Adonai yedaber pi, ve'varach b'basar shemkut shalom v'ed.
Yasher Koah. Thanks for being good sports about that. Page 234, we rise as we return the Torah to the Ark.
We need
the ark openers and Torah carrier again?
Yes.
You look like Karen, yeah.
Yeah, hallelujah, Shem Adonai, ki nizkar shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keherem leyamo, tilalecho asira livnei Yisrael al kerovo.
All right, so we can all be seated and put away our scenery for a moment. And we are going to hear a drash from Rabbi Andy Berlin.
I need just for Clem to minute all the young people who led us in Ashrei are young people that I think all of them I've watched grow up. 2 of them being my own, and one of the 2 about to leave for college on Tuesday. So that was quite a beautiful moment about community and how we raise our children here and just what it means to be a member of Temple Beth Abraham. And my keep is falling off. So as the Chazanit said, I'm sorry this was your bat mitzvah portion. I mean, I'm excited, I'm happy for you. Mazel tov on your 25 years ago bat mitzvah. But yeah, it's an interesting portion for a 13-year-old or 12. I don't know how old you were, but that would be a tough age. But there is good news. Actually, it's a beautiful portion for a lot of reasons. Divorce is a mitzvah. And you're going to hear more about that in a moment. But I want to share a convergence of 3 really interesting, I think they're interesting events in my life that all kind of happened at the same time. And as Rabbi Bloom would say, a coincidence? I think not. That's a coincidence?
I think not.
Thank you, Rabbi Bloom's wife, who was like the one who knew what to say. Thanks, Karen. So first of all, Kittitzeh it's got the most laws of any Torah portion that we've had before. There are 74 mitzvot, 74 commandments, laws that are in this week's Torah portion. And while our triennial reading actually covers mostly the laws that are socially conscious, some beautiful laws just about how we treat the poor, how we handle people who made pledges that they can't live up to, how we manage vineyards, really some beautiful, beautiful laws. There are many specifically in this week's Torah portion that remind us that when God gave us the Torah, when the Torah was written, however we see it, women were property. So one of the 3 things that happened that is really what formed this drash. I've been doing teaching, one-on-one teaching through something called the Jewish Learning Collaborative, which is sponsored by Moish House, where Jewish executives are paired with educators. And whatever those Jewish executives want to learn, we learn. And for whatever reason, I've ended up with a lot of learners who want to learn about feminine perspectives on Judaism. And I don't know if it's because of word of mouth that, people talking about me just happen, or it's because there is an assumption about what it is that I might have to offer as a rabbi who also happens to be a woman. And what's really interesting about this for me is, those of you who know that my bulk of my career was at Temple Sinai in Oakland. I came to Oakland when I was the first female rabbi in Oakland. I was 27 years old. I was single. I didn't look older than 27 years old. And I made a conscious decision to completely stay away from feminism. I never taught anything about women in history. I never taught Jewish feminist thought. And the reason why is because I already knew the way I presented the assumptions that would exist about me. And so here I am as a 50-year-old rabbi now. I've been in the rabbinate, longer than I've been married, so like 22 or 23 years. And I suddenly have these learners who want to learn about the feminist perspective in Judaism, and I don't have that background. I don't have an academic knowledge about any of that. So I started reading Judith Glasgow, who is the one to start reading when you want to understand Jewish feminist thought. I didn't understand her at first. Essentially what she tries to explain is that the problem with feminist theology is that it's feminist. Let me explain what that means. We have a tradition that's over 2,000 years old. We also have a tradition that makes it very clear that the older something it is, the more authority it has. So the closer to Torah we are, the more authority we have, right? Which means Torah has the most authority, then Mishnah, then Gemara, then the entire compilation of Talmud, then the codes that go on from there. And there are no woman voices there. They just don't exist. They're completely absent. So the perspective and the knowledge and the unique understanding that 51% of our population has is missing from our tradition. And so now in trying to add it on, because it's modern, it will always be other. It can't be integrated the same way as the more ancient texts, which stand alongside oral Torah that stands alongside written Torah. It will always be feminist. When I talk about theology, it's not Jewish theology, it's feminist theology. It always has that label. In fact, what Plaskow uses is something I've encountered my entire career, which is, I'm not a rabbi. I'm a female rabbi. And I actually have never heard any of my male colleagues referred to as a male rabbi, and now we also know that that's very binary in terms of thinking of female and male rabbis. But the same is true with the way there's always going to be, when we try to think of the female perspective, feminist theology, feminist thought, feminism, it's never going to be just a natural evolution of Judaism. And I struggled to understand this. I understand this now, but it took me a little bit. So the second thing that happened, the second event that converged that helped lead to this drash, is I was on a hike with a friend of mine in the Redwood Regional Park in Oakland trying to get away from the smoke in Contra Costa. And as we were walking, the sun was kind of rising above the smokiness of this. It was after sunrise, but it was just starting to peak above that smokiness and starting to shine. And we walked into this redwood grove, and there was this patch of grass with fallen trees and woodiness and some flowers. And we looked, and there was this little bunny that was kind of hopping along, and it was making its way almost from ray of sun to the next ray of sun, to the next ray of sun. And we just were struck silent. It was so beautiful. And I didn't have any data on my phone, so I couldn't pull up one of the 100 blessings that one says at that moment. So what came to me? Hana Senesh. Oh God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the roar of heaven, this bunny jumping through the forest. And that was the prayer. And suddenly it hit me what Judith Plaskow was talking about. Hana Senesh had women build up Jewish text and Jewish thought and Jewish law from its inception. That prayer would be just as integral to our ritual as Motzi Lechem min haaretz. But if we talk about Hana Senesh's poem as a prayer, it's too modern, it's too other. It would not be accepted into the canon of liturgy. And that's when I understood what Judith Plaskow meant. The third thing is this week's Torah portion. Divorce is a mitzvah. It really, truly, 100% is. It is a commandment. And how to go about divorce is a commandment in the Torah. The way I used to talk about get, which is the bill of divorce that a man hands his husband, because I was always in a progressive context and didn't have to go through the way the divorce laws exist in the halakha in more fundamental ways of understanding the law. The way I used to talk about it is, isn't it incredible? Thousands of years ago, either God, when God handed us the Torah, or whoever wrote it, realized that humans are imperfect. And that it's simply human to be in this long-term commitment and know there should be a way out of it. And what a blessing, what a mitzvah in its colloquial sense, that this was understood. That we need to have a way of recognizing the very normal and beautiful human failings. We don't have to stay in something unhealthy. But that's not what it says in the text. What it says in the text is actually if a man no longer, like finds the woman unappealing because of an ervat, because of something distasteful or disgusting or almost unseemly in her, this is what he does. He writes a bill of divorce and he gives it to her, and then he's free of her. And I think everybody, this is in chapter 24, verse 1, I think everybody here probably, and most people watching on YouTube and Facebook, know that because the halakha, because Jewish law had to be built on what existed in Torah, it could only go so far to equalize divorce laws. And still today, even though time and time and time again, modern law, especially in Israel, has tried to get around this idea or this reality that divorce is in the control of the husband. He decides to give a get, and he can withhold that get if he wants more custody of the children, if he doesn't like the financial, monetary settlement, if he wants retribution and is very angry. He does not have to give that get. The Beit Din could potentially override it, but there are some legal ramifications in the Israeli Supreme Court. I'm not going to get into all the things. It's been tried to maybe, along with the ketubah, the marriage contract, you sign a halachic prenuptial agreement that forces that also hasn't quite worked out. There's no way of getting around what that means. So what you end up with is this, with agunah, agunot, which I think all of us know, are women who have the status of being forever in a marriage that they want out of because the husband won't give a get. This is a very, very real example of what Judith Plaskow was talking about. That because the very foundation of how our laws work today, our Jewish laws work today, because the very foundation of that was absent 51% of the population, still even today, a couple thousand years later, feminists, people who believe that women are human beings, feminists have not been able to completely find a way to equalize how those laws were built. Our text, the beautiful liturgy that we read this morning, speaks in when I say male language, I don't mean how God is gendered. I mean very stereotypical, classical male ways of understanding that relationship between God and Israel. Our Haftorah portions, the Haftorah of comfort, I've always found them painful to read. They really describe almost like an abusive marriage. God promising, I'm going to cast you out, I'm going to do all this stuff. Okay, I'll bring you back. I love you. I will never get angry again. So what do we do with all of this? I think it's a mistake to retroject our modern values back onto the text. So what I don't enjoy is when we look at the text and we say, this text is bad because it doesn't do X, Y, and Z. It's actually not true at all. If you think about how long ago we received Torah and that it conceived of a way for a marriage to end, it was incredibly progressive for its time. So much of the law, yes, I know, women really were property, but so much of the law and how to protect her was amazingly progressive for the time that it was written. So I don't think we retroject our morality onto the Torah text. And I don't think we ignore our sages, the built-up Mishnah, Gemara, Talmud. What I do think we do is we elevate the voices today that were missing then. And so here's how all of us watching or in the sanctuary can help. Chazanit is not a female cantor. She is a cantor. Your doctor is not a female doctor. She's a doctor. The texts that come out that include a female perspective are not feminist texts. They're Jewish texts. Judith Glasgow is a Jewish theologian. She's not a feminist writer. As the high holidays come up, take a moment perhaps to find theologies written from a perspective that has been missing from our canon for a long time. Understand your relationship with God, not dictated by the very narrow way, especially the high holiday liturgy. The very narrow way that we've been told we should think of our relationship with God. There is so much in Judaism about other theologies that can speak to a more feminine understanding of what it means to be in partnership with God. Look for these voices. Read these voices. And when people question halakha because of its unfair burden on women, they aren't being a feminist. They are being a Jewish philosopher, and their voice too needs to be elevated. It is my prayer that women and men and people and humans of every shape and color and sexual orientation and gender fluidity, that all of our voices, as we understand them today, carry equal weight and can sprinkle into this very rich and incredible tradition we have more ways of understanding our humanity, our relationship to God, and the laws that surround us. May this indeed be God's will. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Berlin. We will continue on with the Musaf service, page 239. Please rise for the Hatzik Pradesh.
Yikada Shemei Rabba Be'alma Divrach Hirutei Ve'amit Malchutei B'chayachon Ve'amachon B'chayedachol Beit Yisrael B'agalav Izman Karri V'imru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam U'me'ol Yitbarach V'ishtabach V'bar V'kraman Yitnaseh V'tadar V'talai V'talal Shmei D'Kudesha L'richu Le'ela Min Kol B'chata V'shirata Tush B'chata V'nechemata Damira Me'alma V'imru Amen Adonai Sefatai Tiftachu Fi Agitei Latecha Adonai Sefatai Tiftachu Fi Agitei Latecha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor V'Hanola, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avod, Umevi Goel Ibnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham U'Foked Sarah, Atah Gibor Ne'olam Adonai, Nechayem Eitim Atara V'Hoshia, Mechalchel Chayim B'Chesed, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומדום אליו, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצליח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נריצך ונקדישך כסוד שיח שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב יד נביאך וכרז זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם, משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, הוא יפה מרחמים ויחונם, המייחדים שמו ערב הבוקר בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים באהבה שמע אומרים, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישליענו, ברחמיו שנית, לעיני כל חי, ליאור לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד לך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We continue silently from page 247 to 258.
עושה שלום ממרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ויראו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Page 259, Kaddish Shalom.
יקרא שני רבי, ועמד דברי חירתי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכנו ימלכנו חי לכל בית ישראל, והגולה בזמן קריב יאמרו. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ועולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, יפאר ותרומם וינסה, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי לקודשה. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם ביומה ויאמרו. תקבל שבועתנו ובתון דכל ישראל, קדם ובהודי ושמיה ויאמרו. יהי שלום הרבה משמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו. Ein Eloheinu, Ein Eloheinu, Ein Eloheinu, Kamoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Kamoshienu, No Eloheinu, No Eloheinu, No Eloheinu, No Eloheinu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shektiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Ektoreh Asani. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'aseh kedula l'yotzer reshi, shelo asanu tigoyei haratzot, velo asamanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu katem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachlim u'modim, lifnei melech malei hamlamim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shehu noten shamayim v'yosed haaretz, u'moshev yekaro b'shamayim b'ma'al, u'shchinatu zo, v'govei meromim, hu Eloheinu einon, en Eloheinu efesu latov, kakatu b'torato, v'datayom v'hashemota, elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim v'ma'al, ve'al haaretz mitah. כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Shabbat, we lovingly recall the memory of our departed relatives and friends whose yard site we observed during the week of 13 through 19 Elul. And my apologies in advance if I mispronounce any of your loved ones' names. Kiva Atterich, Louis Bernstein, Herbert Bloom, Herman Budman, Maury Friedkin, Ethel Gluck, Judelle Gold, Harry Goldstein, Paula Gordon, Harry Hertz, Martin Hertz, Molly Hertz, Marcia Jacobs, Sam Kahane, George Kaplan, Boris Katz, Ruth Klein, Lionel Barnett Kurtz, Mel Lazar, Bruce Leibowich, Samuel Lesson, Eve Levis, Brenda Hillary Maltz, Rita Manson, David Nuremberg, John Odenheimer, Joel Osseroff, Mila Rocklin Gurbich, Lillian Rothstein, Mary Chipkin Schushine, Abraham Shapiro, Sarah Scheidlauer, Max Sherman, Charles Sims, Sue Stevens, Francis Turkin, Hans Georg Venus, Lucy Walensky, Samuel Waxman, Joseph Weiner, Lillian West, Louis Zucker. Our recent passings include Andy Simonoff, sister of Eric Lev, and Edith Denenberg, mother of Barbara Osseroff. For any of you that are observing a yard site today, or for who it is your custom to do so, please rise for the Mourner's Kaddish on page 267.
יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, ואלמד יברא פרטי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
All right, we are going to turn now to announcements, I believe. President David Goodwin, I believe, is still here. Are you? There we go. He's all set.
Long way to come down for announcements. So first of all, thanks so much to Hazami Krieger for leading services, and for John Jacobs and Audrey Kaufman for chanting Torah, and Hazami Yael for the Haftarah. And thank you to Rabbi Andy Berlin for your drash, which I got quite a lot out of. I very much enjoy listening to you. The other announcements are on the back of the handout and on the website, but I do want to mention the email that went out to the congregation on Friday afternoon to sign up for High Holiday services, which will be outside this year in the courtyard. And if you haven't signed up for a service yet, I urge you to do so tonight or tomorrow, because they're actually filling up quite quickly. And in addition to picking one of the 4 services that are available on the website, anyone can sign up for Erev Rosh Hashanah and second day of Rosh Hashanah. And I urge you to do that. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, thank you. All right, we are going to close on page 269 with Adon Olam. And I don't know what tune it will be, I guess we'll be surprised.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Bo Yetzir Nivra V'Chet Nasa V'Chet Sofo Azai Nelech Shemo Nikra Azai Nelech Shemo Nikra V'Yacharei Kitlog HaKol Ano imlach nora vehu haya vehu hover vehu yiyeh betifara vehu yiyeh betifara vehu echad be'ech sheni lehamshilo lehachmira V'lireishi v'litachli v'la'oz v'hamisra v'la'oz v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai goli surcheli v'etzara v'hu nisi umanosli Menakosi beyom ekra, Menakosi beyom ekra, beyado afid ruchi beyet ishan, beyayra vehim ruchi yebiati Adonai li velo ira Adonai li velo ira. Shabbat shalom.